On July 24th, 1148 AD, the Crusaders began their siege of the city of Damascus. It would be their last military action of the Second Crusade in the Middle East. The Second Crusade was led by Holy Roman Emperor Conrad III and King of France, Louis VII. They began their crusade in 1145 after hearing the call for another one by Bernard of Clairvaux, who preached around Europe to try and drum up support for a new one, and Pope Eugene III, who officially sanctioned it. The Crusader siege was supported by the King of Jerusalem, Baldwin III, whose kingdom was on the verge of collapsing. The original plan was for the Crusaders to recapture the city of Edessa, which was the whole point of the Second Crusade. But at the Council of Acre, the Knights Templar and Baldwin decided to take Damascus, despite its governor, Mu'in ad-Din, having a former alliance with the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The governor of Damascus did not want to fight the Crusaders and wished they would try to retake Edessa or another city. The Crusaders began their siege of Damascus on the 24th of July. Their original camp was located near the orchards of Gula, which would provide them with food, water, and a lot of trees for a lengthy siege of the city. According to Archbishop and historian William of Tyre, at Daria, since the city was now so near, the sovereigns drew up their forces in battle formation and assigned the legions to their proper places in order of march. Because of its supposed familiarity with the country, the division was led by the King of Jerusalem, was, by common decision of the princes, directed to lead the way and open a path for the legions following. The King of the Franks and his army was assigned to the second place, or center, that they might aid those ahead if need arose. By the same authority, the emperor was to hold the third or rear position in readiness to resist the enemy if perchance an attack should be made from behind. The Crusaders attacked the city, but the defenders of Damascus were ready for them and drove them back. The orchards and the oasis that the Crusaders wanted to use for the siege were fiercely defended. According to William of Tyre, the cavalry forces of the townsmen and those who had come to their assistance realized that our army was coming through the orchards in order to besiege the city, and they accordingly approached the stream which flowed into the town. They did with their bows and their crossbows so they could fight off the Latin army. The emperor, in command of the forces following, demanded to know why the army did not advance. He was told the enemy was in possession of the river and would not allow our forces to pass. Enraged at the news, Conrad and his knights galloped swiftly towards the king's lines and reached the fighters who were trying to win the river. Here, all leaped down from their horses and became foot soldiers, as is custom of the Teutons when desperate crisis occurs. Conrad's charge led the Crusaders to fight their way through and chase the defenders back across the river and back into the city of Damascus. The defenders, however, installed fortifications in before the siege, which cut any chance of supplies coming from the river. Conrad, according to William of Tyre, during this engagement, the emperor is reported to have performed a memorable feat. He's said to have slain in the most remarkable way a Turkish knight who was making a strenuous and courageous resistance. With one blow of the sword, he severed from the body of his enemy the head and neck, the left shoulder, with the arm attached, and also a part of his side, despite the fact that the foe was wearing a cuirass. This indeed caused such terror, not only to those citizens who witnessed the feat, but even to those who merely heard the story from others, and that they lost all hope of resisting and despaired even of life itself. By the end of the day, the Crusaders were outside the walls of the city of Damascus. The people living around the villages and the orchards and oases fled to the safety of the city. The Crusaders stripped the orchards of food and chopped down the trees to make stake walls and other temporary fortifications and defenses. For the next 2 days, the defenders attacked the Crusaders and received reinforcements from nearby Lebanon, led by Saif ad-Din. They also made several deadly raids into the Crusader camps, inflicting a large amount of casualties. On the 27th, the Crusaders moved their camp to the less fortified side of Damascus, but this area had less access to water and left them open to even more attacks. Both sides of the Crusades were having to deal with internal problems. The Crusaders were arguing with who would take control of the city if they captured it, while the defenders' leadership was in question as the governor did not trust the relief force leader. The siege of the city soon collapsed. According to William of Tyre, The resulting dispute contributed to the failure of the siege because the local barons preferred that the Damascens should keep their city rather than see it given to the Count of Flanders, Theodoric, and so they did all they could to ensure that the siege failed. On July 28th, the siege ended. Many historians believe that the Knights Templar were bribed by the defenders, according to English historian Henry of Huntingdon. 1148. In this year, the armies of the Emperor of Germany and the King of France were annihilated, though they had commenced their march under the greatest leaders and in the proudest confidence. But God despised them, for they have abandoned themselves to open fornication, to robbery, and every sort of wickedness. First, they were starved by famine through false conduct of the Emperor of Constantinople, and afterwards were destroyed by the enemy's sword. King Louis and the Emperor took refuge at Antioch and afterwards in Jerusalem with the remnants of their followers. And the French king, wishing to do something to restore his reputation, laid siege to Damascus with the aid of the Knights Templar of Jerusalem and a force drawn from all quarters, but lacking the favor of God, and therefore having no success, he returned to France. After the failure of the Second Crusade, Conrad went back to Constantinople to continue his alliance with Eastern Roman Emperor Manuel I. Bernard of Clairvaux, who called for the Second Crusade, felt humiliated by its failure, tried to disassociate himself from the Crusaders. He later tried to drum up support for another one, but his pleas fell upon deaf ears and no one would give him an audience.